Welcome to the help video for your Module 2 Assignment 2 activity. This at least 5 days to complete because you're going to track specifically how you use your time for 5 consecutive days and then analyze the results as part of this module's assignment. So don't wait until the last minute, think proactively, and be sure to start at least 5 days before the due date for this assignment. Getting into the directions, the first thing you're going to want to do is click this link right here to download your time log. This is not a file you'll submit, but you can print this file out and keep it with you. Keep it in your backpack, your purse, your wallet, your folder, whatever's on you the most often. Print this file out. It looks identical to this sheet over here on the right-hand side of the screen. And you can take this with you to record your daily activities, what you're doing half hour by half hour in those blocks. So take this with this activity, record 5 consecutive days of specifically how you're using your time, and they're broken down into half-hour intervals. So work with that system the best you can. There'll be some rounding on there because not everything is done in half-hour intervals, but do the best you can with the structure of the assignment. So the first thing you'll want to do is download this file. This will help you track how you are spending your time for those 5 days. Notice that you can't type directly into this file, so you'll print it out and you'll write on it directly with a pen or pencil, and this will be for your record to make the second part of the assignment a little easier. The second file that you're going to download is the file that you'll submit for credit on this assignment. It's titled M2A2 Time Tracking Activity File, and the note is given here that this is the file you'll submit for grading. So click this link and let's begin the overview of your specific assignment for this module. This is what that file is going to look like. Notice that on your directions there are 4 parts, part 1, part 2, part 3, and part 4, and on your file that you'll complete and submit for credit on this assignment, on the bottom there are also 4 parts, part 1, part 2, part 3, and part 4, and those 4 parts coincide with the 4 parts from the directions. So let's start at the beginning and work our way through the 4 parts of this week's or this module's assignment, starting with estimate. So the directions say, before you begin tracking your time, estimate how many hours you think you'll spend on the items provided on part 1 of your activity file for the 5 days that you're going to track. So that's what we have in front of us here. You're going to break your time down into class time, reading or homework, sleeping, working, volunteering, hobbies, technology, video games. Hygiene is like showering, getting ready in the morning, getting ready before bed, etc. Spending time with family or friends, eating, driving from one place to another, and then just household responsibility or obligations within the household. So the first thing you'll do then is estimate how many hours you think you'll spend on each of these items within the 5 days you're going to track. That just so happens to represent 120 hours. So as you type in your estimates, you'll notice that this number here will be other, and it will get smaller and smaller and smaller. So let's start with class time. Maybe during those 5 days you have a few classes. Let's put that into maybe 12 hours, and we'll keep going. Notice that our number now is going down to other. Reading and homework, maybe another 12 hours to match those 12 hours of class time. Sleeping 5 days, how much sleep are you getting per night? Let's just say maybe 40 hours of sleep. Working during that 5-day period, do you have a part-time job maybe 20 hours. Volunteering, maybe you've got an hour of volunteer work to do. Hobbies, things that you just enjoy doing, working on art, playing a sport, going to the gym, so 5 hours. Maybe 1 hour per day for 5. Technology is everything technology related with the exception of video games. The reason being is video games sometimes take up an extraordinary amount of time, so it has its own category. Some folks won't play video games at all, and some people will spend many hours playing video games. So those two are different, but maybe you watch 2 hours of Netflix per day. This is a 5-day period, so let's say that's 10 hours. Video games, maybe you don't play video games. Let's put 0. Hygiene, getting ready, an hour a day, 2 hours per day, it's up to you. Let's just go with 10 hours here on hygiene. Hanging out with family or friends, maybe a couple hours during that period. Eating, that adds up as well, so we only have 7 hours left to pull from. So eating 5 days straight, maybe let's just cut it in half and say 2.5. Driving a couple hours, and then household obligations, let's say a couple of hours as well, and that brings us down to 1 hour left over. So that's just an estimate. This doesn't have to be exact, but before you track your time for 5 days, fill in each of these categories with how many hours you think you'll spend on each of those categories for the 5-day period. Once you do that, you may move on to part 2 of the assignment, where we're going to track our time. So let's have a look at it. The time tracking part of the assignment is designed to mimic what you recorded on the file that you printed out from the earlier portion of this video. That file looks something like this. So if you're using this file and you're being specific and you're being detailed, you can take exactly what you write for this 5-day interval and just paste it into each of the 5 days that are represented here. So use that information, be as specific as possible. Don't just put class, put specifically what class. Don't just put technology, put watching TV or watching Netflix. So try to be as specific as you possibly can so the results are more meaningful to you. So replace each of the 5 days with the day of the week and the date that it corresponds to. You do not need to use any codes in this section. You'll see that in the next section. Things like C, H, S, W. You'll see those in part 3, but they do not belong here. You'll lose points if you use codes on this part of the assignment. It'll make more sense whenever you see part 3 here in just one moment. So for this portion, type in exactly what you were doing. Maybe sleeping here, sleeping as well, maybe sleeping all the way through, and then maybe at 8 o'clock your SLS 1101 class starts and it's still going on now as well. So paste in exactly what you're doing. You shouldn't have any empty squares from this section filled in with the time that you were spending during that duration. And that is part 2. Be specific and honest. For example, watching Hulu, studying for life science, etc. So that's part 2 of the assignment. Part 3 of the assignment is similar, but instead of being specific with what exactly you were doing, on part 3, you're going to categorize each of those sections into one of these various categories. These will also coincide with your estimates that you made earlier on this activity. So have your schedule next to you as you're filling this in so you don't have to go back and forth between the 2 tabs to try to figure out what it was you were doing during these times. So if you have your printout, you can go through and you can start filling in the letters with what you were doing. These were just typed in here as placeholders, but they can be replaced. So 12 a.m. will say that we were sleeping, and that goes with S. So let's start populating in S's for what we were doing in the middle of the night. These will all be sleeping. And then let's say we wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning or so and we start getting ready for the day. That would go in with personal hygiene, showering, etc. That's going to be a P. So we type in some P's here. Maybe that takes an hour or so. You can see that our graphs are changing as we're typing this in. We said at 8 o'clock in the morning was SLS class. So let's fill that in with time in class, which is C. And we'll say that class lasts for an hour and 15 minutes or so, and then you have another class right after. Maybe after class you do some studying, so we'll put in the time for studying, which is reading, research, studying, and homework, which is R. So let's populate maybe an hour into studying. It's almost lunchtime now. We skip breakfast for this part of the activity, but eating coincides with E. So we'll type in an E here, maybe we eat for an hour. And what you're going to see is that as you're populating this in, your circle graph is going to grow and it's going to keep track of exactly how many hours you're spending on each of these. By the way, there should be no blanks here, so fill it in entirely. Notice here you also have your actual data represented on this line, but this document also pulls in what your estimates were from the first part of the activity. So you can compare how you actually used your time to how you thought you would use your time, and the difference between those amounts is populated here. So a lot of interesting information here that you can analyze. Once this is fully completed, you'll have a beautiful visual idea of how you spent your time based on the circle graph here, and that will wrap up part 3 of the assignment, leaving us with one final part. Okay, lastly, we're going to do part 4, which is link your time spent to your values. So on part 4, you're going to find many values listed, these values coincide with a personal values assessment that you might have taken earlier in this module, but if not, you'll want to take this now. So click this link if you haven't done this yet. This will bring you to the following website. It looks like this, where you have all these various values to pick from, and you're going to select the top 10 that reflect your personality as closely as possible. So go through. For the sake of this video, I'll just pick the first 10 to be easy to follow. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Please don't do this for your assignment. Read through and find out which 10 make the most sense for you. To get your results of this assessment, you'll click submit. But for our assignment, we want to know specifically what the 10 values we selected were. Because what you're going to do is, on your file, these are the same values in the same order. And the first thing you're going to do is highlight each of the values you selected and fill that cell in a light green color. All the directions are up here at the top. I made it simple, so I just did the first 10, which I'll do here. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And the directions say to fill that in a light green, so we'll find what light green looks like. So those were the 10 values that I selected. Now you're going to go back through the values again, and you're going to say, imagine that a stranger picked up this piece of paper right here and didn't know anything about you, and they were going to try to guess what your top 10 values were based off of how you spent your time alone. What would that person say are your top 10 values? So this is a little bit different. Maybe let's see, you spend a lot of time with friends, so they think friendship is one of your top 10 values. You'll highlight that a light red. Maybe you spend a lot of time at work, so maybe wealth is one of your top 10 values. So what would a stranger say are your top 10 values based off of how you spent your time and not anything to do with what you already know about yourself? What would a stranger say? So you're going to highlight the 10 that you selected. You're also going to highlight the 10 that you think a stranger would select. That's going to be in red. But if any of these overlap, like for example, you identified that as one of your top values and a stranger would agree because you spent a lot of time exhibiting an activity that relates to that value, you're going to highlight those in light yellow. So for example, maybe you spend a lot of time in class. That goes hand in hand with achievement, getting a college degree, and maybe a stranger would agree with that. Those two overlap, and that one would be yellow. So there's 3 different options here. If it's a value that you identified, highlight it green. If it's a value that a stranger would identify for you, highlight it red. And if they coincide, meaning both you selected it for yourself and a stranger would agree based off of how you spent your time, highlight those yellow. And that's the final part of the assignment. Once you finish this, be sure to save it as your last name, first name, M2A2 as an Excel file. Be sure to check the rubric before and after submitting so you know that you're getting full credit on the assignment. Whenever you're finished, click the assignment title at the top, attach your file, and if you have any questions, reach out with your instructor. Hope the video helped and enjoy your Module 2 Assignment 2 time tracking activity. Thanks for watching.